Hello, class 12th student. Today, again, I am going to start chapter Poverty from your book Indian Economic Development. This is part 2. In the first part, I had told you about what do you mean by the poverty, who are considered as a poor in rural and urban area, and we had learned about the absolute poverty and relative poverty. In this chapter, we are going to talk about the measurement, how we are going to measure the poverty, yani how we are going to decide a person is poor, a person is non poor. Okay, so in India, if you talk about the India, poverty line is that criteria that is helpful to decide a person is poor or not poor. Okay, so in this video we are going to discuss about the poverty line in detail. How to measure poverty, absolute poverty. Okay, so in India, poverty line is used a standard measure the number of the poor people. In poverty line, a standard is fixed in terms of minimum level of consumption. Okay, so this minimum level of consumption is related to 2400 calorie in rural area and 2100 calorie in urban area. Okay, so who the people who are not able to arrange, are not able to take this much calorie, they are considered as a poor. Okay, absolute poverty sorry, refers to a situation when a person fails to reach this minimum consumption level. In context of India, proportion of people living the below poverty line gives the absolute measure of the poverty. So in this chapter we are going to discuss about in detail poverty line. So poverty line is actually way to measure absolute poverty, and absolute poverty give us the number how many people who are not able to arrange the basic amenities themselves. Okay, in the previous video we had learned about the poverty. What do you mean by the poverty? Poverty is a situation when a people is not able to arrange the basic amenity himself or herself. So this condition is considered as a poverty. Okay, then we had learned that who are poor. So if you talk about the rural area, so landless labor, marginal farmer, okay, the cultivator, tenant, these are considered as a poor. If you talk about the rural area, so vendors, okay, uh, cobbler, so such type of people are considered as a poor. They are not able to arrange their basic requirement of food, shelter, education, foods themselves. So that is why they are considered as a poor. After that, we had learned about the two type of poverty: absolute poverty and relative poverty. Okay, relative means in compared to each other. So suppose a person is earning 1 lakh and second person is earning 50 lakh. So first person is richer or second person is poor in compared to first one. Here actually both are not poor, but in compared to each other, someone is getting more and someone is getting less. So relative poverty uh, is only the concept of relative poverty only tell about who is earning more, who is earning less. Okay, so actually this concept is not helpful to decide ki who are poor and who are not poor. Okay, so for that we uses absolute poverty. Absolute poverty is that criteria that differentiate between poor and non-poor. Okay, now here we are going to discuss about the measurement of the poverty. So already I had told you, for the measuring the poverty we use poverty line. Okay, poverty line is that cutoff that divide poor and non-poor people. Okay, so here in this heading we are going to discuss about measurement of poverty. Pre means during the British rule, post means after getting independence, yani Indian government. Okay, so in pre-independent India, first attempt is done by Dada Bhai Naroji. Okay, how he has done estimation of poverty line? With the help of jail cost of living. So what is jail cost of living? The jail cost of living was regarded as the cost of consumption by an adult prisoner, and for estimating, Naroji used the menu for the prisoner at the appropriate prevailing price. By dividing the country's population into two parts, he estimated poverty line on the basis of jail of cost of living. It was assumed that one third of the country population consists of children. Out of this, half of them consumed very little while other half consumed adult diet. Two-thirds of the country population consists of adult and they consumed full diet. On the basis, the average poverty line came to be third-fourth of the adult jail of the cost living. So in this way, what is important? Two things is important. In pre India, if you talk about the measurement of poverty line, so who has done the first attempt? Dada Bhai Naroji. And what is the base? Jail cost of living. So this much you have to keep in your mind. Okay, student? Now, next is in post independent India. So in post means we are talking about after 1947, yani we are talking about when there is our government, yani Indian government. Okay, so several attempt has been made to define who are poor and who are not poor. Okay, so today we are having Niti Aayog, the think tank, who has the replacement of planning commission. So this time poverty is decided by Niti Aayog and data collection is done by National Sample Survey, NSSO. Okay, so here in 1962 the planning commission formed a study group. Thereafter the government of India formed various committee for poverty estimation. First is Alag committee that come in 1977, then Lakhadwala committee that is related to 1989. After that Tendulkar committee, it is formed in 2005. Okay, now the planning commission constitutes these group time to time to review the methodology issue related to measure of the poverty so that it can be make relevant. Okay, the poverty line contemporary economic situation. Okay, why there is need of making these type of committee? क्योंकि समय से टाइम टू टाइम क्या होता है, प्राइस फ्लक्चुएट करता है, प्राइस हाई होता है, इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ता है, तो ऑब्वियसली हमें जो कट ऑफ है उसको भी चेंज करना होता है. तो इसीलिए इन कमिटीज़ को फॉर्म किया गया. वो प्रेजेंट फिनोमेना इकोनॉमिक एंड अदर सिनारियो को ध्यान में रखते हुए दे विल गिव हाउ वी कैन एस्टिमेट पॉवर्टी. ओके, now the methodology used by the planning commission at present is since 2011 to estimate poverty is based on recommendation of expert group under the chairmanship of Professor Suresh D. Tendulkar. Okay, initially what is the criteria for calculating the poverty? Initially it is calorie intake. Okay, so but calorie intake, how we come to know कि हाँ this person is taking calorie intake or not? Okay, so for that Tendulkar has given suggestion कि if a person is expending 816 rupees in rural area and 1000 rupees in urban area, so this person is not considered as a poor. If he is not able to expend this much money, so it's mean that person is poor. So this recommendation is based upon Suresh D. Tendulkar. So in this slide, what is important? These committee. Okay, Alag committee 1977, Lakhadwala committee 1989 and Tendulkar committee. अब present situation जो methodology use की जा रही है वो किसके बेस पे? एक्सपर्ट ग्रुप, और उसके हेड कौन थे? सुरेश दी तेंदुलकर, जिसको तेंदुलकर कमेटी कहते हैं. वो कब फॉर्म हुआ था? 2005. ओके स्टूडेंट, now concept of poverty. What is poverty? So it is very important for 1 marks, for 2 marks, for 3 or for 4 marks. Okay, वैसे 2 marks question is not asked in the examination, so 1 marks, 3 marks and 4 marks. Okay, what is poverty line? So poverty line is a cutoff point on the line of distribution which usually divide the population of the country as a poor and non-poor. So this is a cutoff point that divide the population of any country between poor and non-poor. तो poverty line के basis पे ही हम determine कर पाते हैं कि कितने लोग हैं जो poor हैं और कितने लोग हैं जो non-poor हैं, यानी जो poor नहीं हैं. Okay, the concept of poverty line is used to measure the extent of poverty in the country. People having income below the poverty line are called poor, and the people with income above the poverty line are called non-poor. So you are going to write this, and after this point and this point. Poverty line tries to capture the socially accepted minimum living standard which the society tries to fulfill. तो poverty line किससे concern है? Poverty line is concerned with the minimum level of living that you require to survive in the society. If you are not able to arrange that much, it's mean you are poor. Okay. Now, determination of the poverty line. In India, monthly per capita expenditure, MPCE. Remember, this is 1 marks question. What is the full form of MPCE? So, monthly per capita expenditure. Method is used to determine the poverty. So, which method is used in India to determine poverty? Monthly per capita expenditure. Okay, according to this method, monetary value yani per capita expenditure, monetary value of minimum calorie intake is calculated. Now, minimum calorie intake is what? The planning commission has defined poverty line on the basis of recommendation nutrition requirement of 2400 calorie per person per day for rural area and 2100 calorie per person in urban area. Now there is question, why more calorie for the rural area and why less calorie in urban area? The reason is that कि majority of the people in rural area are doing physical work, so obviously when you are doing the physical works, so you require more calorie, more energy. Okay, so that's why you require more calorie. If you talk about the urban area, so most of the people do desk job, yani sitting they are doing their job, so there is requirement of less calorie. So this is the reason, and that is written here also. Higher calorie intake has been fixed for the rural because the rural worker has to greater physical works in compared to urban area. Okay, so what is the criteria in India? Minimum calorie intake for rural area, this is 24 calorie, and for the urban area it is 2100 calorie. And what is the criteria? Monthly per capita expenditure. It is calculated, yeah, it is determined which method, by which method? Monthly per capita expenditure method. Okay, now next is monetary value of minimum calorie intake. सो कैलोरी इंटेक मैंने बता दिया कि हाँ, अगर आप 2400 कैलोरी ले रहे हो तो यू आर नॉट पुअर. इफ़ यू आर नॉट एबल टू टेक दिस मच कैलोरी तो यू आर पुअर. ओके, सो अब हम कैलोरी इंटेक को कैसे मेजर करेंगे? बाई एक्सपेंडिचर. ओके, सो दिस एक्सपेंडिचर अकॉर्डिंग टू द प्लानिंग कमीशन Tendulkar methodology, according to Tendulkar methodology, the minimum monthly per capita consumption expenditure in 2011 is worked out to be 1816 per person in rural area and 1000 in urban area. Okay, so अगर आप अर्बन एरिया में रह रहे हो और 816 रुपीज़ एक्सपेंड कर रहे हो पर पर्सन, तो इट्स मीन यू आर नॉट अ पुअर पर्सन. और अगर आप अगर अर्बन एरिया में हो तो दिस क्राइटेरिया इज रिलेटेड टू 1000 रुपीज़. ओके, नाउ पॉवर्टी लाइन डिवाइड्स द पुअर from the non-poor. There are many kinds of poor. Okay, so first of all poverty line divide poor and non-poor, and इसके अलावा poverty के कई टाइप भी हैं. तो यहाँ पे आप देखोगे तो there are many kind of poor. Now we are going to talk about only poor. non-poor को आप forget कर दो और we are talking about the poor. तो poor में absolute poor, the very poor, and similarly there are various kind of non-poor, the middle class, upper middle class, the rich. So these are related to non-poor. Okay, here is given this box and this is very important for your examination. Okay student, so absolute poor, very poor, poor, not so poor, middle class, upper class, the rich, the very rich, millionaire, billionaire. So these are related to poor and these are related to non-poor. Okay, and this is your poverty line. If you are earning, so you are not poor. If you are not able to take this much in calorie intake, so you are poor. And this is again divided into three parts: absolute poor, very poor, poor. Okay, now we are going to discuss about next. This method is of determination of poverty line is updated over time to take care of the change in price level. इसमें भी टाइम टू टाइम चेंज होता रहता है क्योंकि इन्फ्लेशन रेट चेंज होते रहते हैं, बढ़ते रहते हैं, तो ऑब्वियसली there will be requirement to make the change in the expenditure also. Okay, now categories poverty yani categorizing poverty yani kind of poverty. So here you can see in the graph Poverty line. This black line, bold line is what? Poverty line. Okay, this should make the differentiation poor between poor and non-poor. Okay, so here first of all, always poor, yani those people who never earn according to Tendulkar committee. Okay, then usually poor, most majority of the time, yeah, most of the month they are poor, sometime they get more income. Okay, फिर cheering poor. So these are the chronic poor. Chronic poor में दो आएंगे, always poor and usual poor. Okay, फिर है ट्रांजिट पुअर. ट्रांजिट पुअर में चर्निंग एंड ओकेजनली पुअर आते हैं. तो इसमें क्या है कि सम टाइम्स दे अर्न मोर देन व्हाट इज फिक्स्ड बाय द गवर्नमेंट. ओके, ओकेजनली पुअर, तो ये ज़्यादातर पुअर नहीं रहते, बट सम टाइम दे आर नॉट एबल टू गेट द मनी, तो दे बिकम द पुअर. ओके, एंड देन नॉन पुअर, वो कभी भी पुअर नहीं होते हैं. ओके, सो दिस इज कैटेगराइजिंग पॉवर्टी. नाउ, इज देयर एनी डिक्रीज इन द पॉवर्टी लाइन? So, according to the government, high rate of economic growth, increase in agriculture production, providing employment in rural area, and economic reform in 1990 had resulted a decline poverty line. So yes, the answer is what? Yes, there is decline in the poverty line. What are the reasons? The economic growth, increase in agricultural products, providing employment, and economic reform. So these are the reason, because of that we find decline in the poverty line. Okay, however, it is argued by the economists that methodology followed to estimate the poverty line and the number of the poor are manipulated to arrive at the reduce the figure of the number of poor in India. Okay, so there is a criticism that the government wanted to reduce the number of the poor so that they can change outlook of India in front of the world. So they manipulate the number. कैसे? जो criteria उसको कम रख के. Okay, so this is a demerit of the poverty line. Next is, moreover, according to them, poverty alleviation scheme of the government should aim to improve human lives by reducing obstacles like literacy, ill health, lack of access to reduce resources, lack of civil and political freedom. तो उन्हें लगता है कि पॉवर्टी लाइन से बेटर ये है कि हम उन्हें ये सारी फैसिलिटी अवेलेबल कराएं, उन्हें इलिटरेट करें, उन्हें अच्छी हेल्थ दें, ठीक है, उन्हें रिसोर्सेज दें और उन्हें फ्रीडम दे, सिविल और पॉलिटिकल फ्रीडम दे, तो ऑटोमेटिक दे आर एबल टू कम आउट फ्रॉम दिस कंडीशन ऑफ पॉवर्टी. ओके, a person should be healthy, well nourished, knowledge, able to participate in the life of the community. The incidence of poverty has declined over the year, especially in 80s, but poverty still remain a problem of considerable magnitude. Okay, no doubt, if you talk about the 1947, if you talk about the today, so there is changes, there is too much changes, but still 21.9% people are still living under the BPL. So this is very challenging number. Okay, now criticism of poverty line. What are the criticism of the poverty line? So we had learned about now what do you mean by the poverty. The poverty line is a cutoff that divide the people of any country between poor and non-poor. Okay, and we had learned about the methodology, post and pre. Okay, now we are going to learn here what is the demerit या drawback या criticism of the poverty line. So the method, what is the method we adopt in poverty line? Monthly per capita expenditure, yani MPCE. So this is very important, beta. It can be asked in 1 mark question. What do you mean by MPCE? Monthly per capita expenditure. Okay, so what are the criticisms? The methodology, the method groups all the poor together. Okay, the method groups all the poor together and does not difference between the poor and other poor. Okay, so this is the first important drawback of this. First is what? It is not able to make the differentiation between very poor and poor. Next is that this mechanism is helpful in identify the poor, okay, by the government, but it is difficult to identify who really need, yeah, who are too much poor. Okay, next is what? There are many factors other than the income and asset which are associated with the poverty, like education, healthcare, drinking water, etc. These things are ignored. Okay, अगर आप 816 अर्न कर रहे हो, 1000 अर्न कर रहे हो, तो यू आर नॉट पुअर. बट दीज थिंग्स आर very important, very important, that is not taken in consideration when you are using monthly per capita expenditure for calculating poverty line. Look, okay, next and fourth and last one criticism is this method does not consider social factor that generate and responsible for poverty like literacy, health, lack of access of resources, discrimination, lack of civil and political freedom. Like in our India, you know, there is casteism. So because of this casteism, there are majority of the people who are having the ability but they are not able to वर्क अकॉर्डिंग टू देयर एबिलिटी. उन्हें शुरू से उन्हें फोर्सफुली जो है दबाया गया. तो रिजल्ट इज़ दैट कि अ पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन फेसेस सीवर पॉवर्टी. सो दीज आर द सोशल फैक्टर. इस पे भी काम होना चाहिए. बट पॉवर्टी लाइन, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द पॉवर्टी लाइन, तो इट डज नॉट टेक कंसिडरेशन दीज सोशल फैक्टर. ओके, नाउ थैंक यू for today. Okay, student.